Eric, a 35-year-old architect from Denver, had been counting down the days to a getaway in the Colorado Rockies with his wife, Emily, a vibrant 32-year-old marketing manager. Their 5-year marriage thrived on balancing their differences. Eric cherished quiet evenings sketching designs, while Emily's energy lit up any room. Lately, work had kept them apart, and Eric saw this trip as a chance to reconnect, just the two of them, surrounded by pine forests and starlit skies. 2 weeks before their departure, Emily burst into their loft, her eyes sparkling. "I booked us a cabin near Estes Park. It's perfect, remote, cozy, with a view of Long's Peak." Eric grinned, picturing lazy mornings by a fireplace, no emails or deadlines. "Sounds like heaven," he said, pulling her into a hug. They spent the evening planning hikes and meals, their excitement palpable. For Eric, it was more than a vacation. It was a reset for their marriage. But 3 days later, over dinner, Emily's tone shifted. She twirled her wine glass, a habit Eric knew meant she was nervous. "So, I was thinking, Lauren might come with us." Lauren, her college friend and freelance photographer, was someone Eric had met a handful of times. She was charismatic, always armed with a quick laugh, but Eric barely knew her. "She's been through a rough patch," Emily continued, her voice soft but persuasive. A break would do her good. Eric's fork paused midair. The trip was supposed to be theirs, a rare escape from the world. He swallowed his unease, searching Emily's face. Her smile was warm, almost pleading, and he felt his resolve weaken. "I thought it'd just be us," he said carefully, keeping his tone light. Emily reached for his hand. "It will be. Lauren's chill, and she won't get in our way. Please, Eric, she needs this." He exhaled, nodding. "All right, if it means that much to you." But as Emily beamed and changed the subject, a knot formed in his chest. Why did this feel like a shift in their plans? The days leading up to the trip were a blur of packing and work deadlines. Eric tried to focus on the excitement, but Lauren's addition gnawed at him. He liked her well enough. She was fun, easygoing, but her presence changed the vibe. He imagined awkward silences or feeling like a third wheel in his own marriage. "You're overthinking," he muttered to himself, zipping up his duffel bag. Still, he couldn't shake the sense that Emily was holding something back. On the morning of the trip, they loaded their SUV and hit the road. The drive through the Rockies was breathtaking, with snow-capped peaks piercing the sky. Emily sang along to the radio, her energy infectious, and Eric felt his doubts soften. Maybe Lauren's presence wouldn't be a big deal. Maybe he was just being possessive of their time. By the time they reached the cabin, nestled in a clearing surrounded by towering pines, Eric's mood lifted. The place was rustic but charming, with a stone fireplace and wide windows framing the mountains. They unpacked quickly, and Emily flung open the windows, letting in the crisp mountain air. "This is perfect," she said, wrapping her arms around Eric. He kissed her forehead, savoring the moment. For a fleeting second, it was just them, and the trip felt like everything he'd hoped for. Then a car crunched up the gravel drive. Lauren hopped out, her camera slung around her neck, her grin wide. "This place is unreal," she called, bounding toward them. She hugged Emily tightly, then turned to Eric with a playful salute. "Thanks for letting me crash your party, man." Eric forced a smile. "No problem. Glad you could make it." But as Lauren and Emily fell into easy chatter, unpacking groceries and laughing over some shared memory, Eric felt a pang of exclusion. Their dynamic was effortless, almost private, and he was on the outside looking in. That evening, they cooked dinner together, grilled chicken, roasted veggies, nothing fancy but hearty. Lauren took charge, teasing Emily about her knife skills, while Emily swatted her with a dish towel, their laughter filling the cabin. Eric offered to help, but Emily waved him off. "We got this. You relax." He leaned against the counter, watching them move and sync, their banter laced with inside jokes. He tried to join in, cracking a joke about Emily's cooking, but their laughter felt polite, not shared. The knot in his chest tightened. At dinner, Lauren raised her glass. "To epic getaways and the best company," she said, winking at Emily. Eric clinked glasses, but her words lingered. "Best company?" He brushed it off, telling himself it was just Lauren's flair for drama. The conversation flowed, mostly driven by Lauren's stories, her latest photo shoot, a wild trip to Iceland. Emily hung on every word, her eyes bright in a way Eric hadn't seen in months. He spoke up when he could, but their energy dominated, leaving him feeling like a guest at his own table. As the night wound down, they moved to the living room, the fireplace casting a warm glow. Emily suggested a board game, and Lauren dove in, her competitive streak sparking more laughter. Eric played along, but his mind wandered. Why was Emily so different around Lauren? Why did their connection feel so intense, almost exclusive? He caught them exchanging a glance, brief but loaded, and his unease deepened. It wasn't jealousy, not exactly. It was the sense that he was missing something vital, something just out of reach. When they finally headed to bed, Emily suggested they all sleep in the master bedroom. It's freezing and the bed's huge. It'll be like a slumber party. Lauren laughed, already on board. Eric hesitated, the idea striking him as odd, but he shrugged. Sure, why not? He wanted to keep the peace, to trust Emily's enthusiasm. But as they piled blankets onto the bed, Lauren and Emily giggling like teenagers, Eric couldn't ignore the growing weight in his gut. This trip was supposed to bring him and Emily closer. Instead, he felt further from her than ever. The first morning in the Colorado cabin dawned crisp and clear, sunlight filtering through the pines and spilling across the wooden floor. Eric woke early, the massive bed feeling oddly empty despite Emily and Lauren still asleep, tangled in blankets. Their decision to share the bed had left him restless, the sounds of their late-night giggles echoing in his mind. He slipped out quietly, hoping a strong coffee and the mountain air would clear his head. In the kitchen, Eric brewed a pot, the gurgle of the coffee maker a small comfort. He stepped onto the porch, the chill biting his skin as he sipped his drink and stared at the peaks. The view was stunning, but it couldn't shake the unease that had settled in his gut. Emily and Lauren's closeness last night, their shared glances, the way they seemed to speak a private language, felt like a wall he couldn't breach. He wasn't jealous, he told himself. He trusted Emily, but something was off, and he couldn't ignore it. Back inside, Emily emerged, her hair messy and her smile bright. "Morning, babe," she said, kissing his cheek before grabbing a mug. "Sleep okay?" Eric nodded, though his eyes lingered on her. She seemed oblivious to his tension, humming as she poured coffee. Lauren followed soon after, her energy undimmed. "This place is magic," she declared, snapping a photo of the view with her phone. "We should hike today. There's a trail nearby, right?" Emily nodded eagerly, and they launched into plans, barely pausing for Eric's input. At breakfast, Eric tried to engage, suggesting a shorter trail since he wanted time to relax later. Lauren waved it off. "Come on, Eric, let's go big. The views from the ridge are worth it." Emily laughed, siding with her. "She's right. Let's do it." Eric forced a smile, but their dismissiveness stung. He felt like an afterthought, his vision of a quiet trip with Emily fading. The hike was grueling, the trail winding steeply through rocky terrain. Lauren led the way, her camera clicking constantly, while Emily kept pace, their chatter relentless. Eric trailed behind, his legs burning and his thoughts churning. He watched them stop to share water, their hands brushing casually. It was a small moment, but it hit him hard. When had Emily stopped touching him like that? He shook his head, blaming the altitude for his paranoia. At the ridge, the view was breathtaking, jagged peaks stretching endlessly under a cloudless sky. Lauren hooped, snapping photos, while Emily leaned into her, pointing at something in the distance. Eric stood apart, catching his breath. "Pretty incredible, huh?" he called, hoping to draw Emily back. She glanced over, smiling. "Totally. You good?" Her tone was warm, but her attention flicked back to Lauren before he could answer. He clenched his jaw, the gap between them feeling wider than the valley below. Back at the cabin, they collapsed onto the couch, tired but buzzing. Lauren suggested cooking dinner together, and soon she and Emily were in the kitchen again, chopping and laughing. Eric offered to grill, needing space. Outside, the sizzle of steaks calmed him, but he couldn't unsee their dynamic. When he returned, the table was set, and Lauren was telling a story about a college party, Emily hanging on every word. Eric sat, picking at his food, his contributions to the conversation met with polite nods. After dinner, they moved to the fireplace, the crackling flames casting shadows. Emily pulled out a deck of cards, and Lauren proposed poker. The game started light, but Lauren's teasing grew sharp, aimed at Eric. "You're too cautious, man. Gotta take risks," she said, tossing chips into the pot. Emily laughed, nudging her. Leave him alone, he's strategic. But her defense felt hollow, and Eric's patience thinned. He folded early, watching them banter, their eyes locking too often. As the night deepened, Emily suggested another group sleep over in the master bedroom. It's warmer, and it's fun, she said, her enthusiasm almost desperate. Lauren agreed instantly, but Eric's stomach twisted. I'll take the couch, he said, his voice firm. Emily's face fell. Come on, don't be like that. He held her gaze, searching for the woman he'd planned this trip with. I just need some space, he said, softer but final. Lauren shrugged, unbothered, but Emily's eyes flickered with something. Guilt? Fear? He couldn't tell. On the couch, Eric lay awake, the fire's glow fading. He heard muffled laughter from the bedroom, then whispers, too low to decipher. His pulse quickened. He wanted to barge in, demand answers, but he stayed put, paralyzed by dread. The whispers grew quieter, then stopped, leaving only silence. He stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment, the glances, the touches, the way Emily lit up around Lauren. Was he imagining it, or was their bond more than friendship? The question gnawed at him, sharper than the mountain cold. By midnight, exhaustion won, but sleep brought no peace. Eric dreamed of Emily slipping away, her laughter echoing as he stood alone. He woke with a start, the cabin silent except for the wind. He checked his phone, 2 a.m. Against his better judgment, he crept toward the bedroom, the floor creaking underfoot. Through the cracked door, he saw them, curled close under the blankets, their breathing soft and synced. It looked innocent, but the sight burned. He retreated, heart pounding, knowing he couldn't ignore the truth much longer. The second morning in the Colorado cabin was quieter, the air heavy with unspoken tension. Eric had barely slept, his night on the couch plagued by the image of Emily and Lauren curled up together. He rose before dawn, the cabin's silence amplifying his racing thoughts. He brewed coffee, the bitter scent grounding him as he stood on the porch, watching the sunrise paint the Rockies in gold. He wanted to confront Emily, to demand clarity, but fear of what he'd uncover held him back. Inside, Emily appeared, her usual brightness dimmed. You're up early, she said, pouring coffee with a forced smile. Eric studied her, noting the way her eyes avoided his. Couldn't sleep, he replied, his voice flat. She nodded, fidgeting with her mug, and the silence stretched. Lauren's arrival broke it, her cheer jarring against the mood. Ready for another adventure? She asked, oblivious or uncaring of Eric's stiffness. He muttered a vague response, his patience fraying. At breakfast, Eric's unease boiled over. He set his fork down, his gaze fixed on Emily. We need to talk about last night. The words hung in the air, sharp and deliberate. Emily froze, her face paling, while Lauren's smile faltered. What's there to talk about? Emily said, her tone too casual. Eric leaned forward. The whispering. The way you two act like I'm not here. What's going on? His voice was steady, but his heart pounded, dreading the answer. Lauren laughed, a nervous edge to it. You're reading too much into it, man. We're just catching up. But Emily's silence spoke louder. She stared at her plate, her hands trembling slightly. Eric's eyes narrowed. Emily, say something. She looked up, her expression a mix of guilt and defiance. You're making a big deal out of nothing, she said, but her voice cracked, betraying her. The argument simmered, but Eric backed off, sensing they were circling the truth. He suggested a day apart, him exploring a nearby lake, them doing whatever they wanted. Emily agreed too quickly, and Lauren's relief was palpable. As Eric grabbed his jacket, he felt their eyes on him, a shared glance he couldn't ignore. He left, the cabin door slamming behind him, his mind screaming that he was losing her. At the lake, the still water mirrored his turmoil. He walked the shore, replaying every moment of the trip. The touches, the laughter, the way Emily seemed alive with Lauren in a way she hadn't been with him. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through old photos of them, happy or so he'd thought. Doubt gnawed at him. Was this new, or had he been blind for years? The thought of betrayal cut deep, but he needed proof, not assumptions. Back at the cabin, the afternoon was tense. Emily and Lauren were on the couch, scrolling through Lauren's photos, their heads close. They straightened when Eric entered, their chatter stopping abruptly. He didn't acknowledge it, heading to the kitchen to prep dinner. As he chopped vegetables, he overheard them in low voices, words like careful, and he suspects drifting through. His grip tightened on the knife, anger flaring. He was done being the outsider. Dinner was strained, the clink of cutlery loud in the silence. Eric broke it, his tone calm but pointed. You two seem to have a lot of secrets. Lauren smirked, deflecting. Not everything's a conspiracy, Eric. But Emily's face flushed, her eyes darting to Lauren. Eric pressed on. If it's nothing, why do you both tense up every time I ask? The question landed like a blow. Emily opened her mouth, then closed it, her resolve crumbling. Later, by the fireplace, the tension peaked. Emily suggested another group sleep over, but Eric shut it down. I'm staying out here, he said, gesturing to the couch. Emily protested, her voice rising. Why are you acting like this? Eric met her gaze, unflinching. Because I don't trust what's happening in that room. The words stunned her into silence, and Lauren's casual shrug couldn't hide her unease. Alone on the couch, Eric's mind raced. Around 1 a.m., he heard again, whispers from the bedroom, soft laughter that felt like a knife. He grabbed his phone, his hands shaking, and crept to the door. The fire's dim glow cast shadows as he recorded, capturing their hushed voices. He's close to figuring it out, Lauren murmured. Emily's reply was faint but clear. I can't keep lying to him. Eric's blood ran cold. He stopped the recording, his worst fears confirmed. Back on the couch, he played the clip, the words searing into him. He wanted to storm in, but strategy overtook emotion. He needed more than a vague confession. Quietly, he checked Emily's phone, left unlocked on the counter. A text to Lauren from last week. I miss you. This trip will be our chance. His heart shattered, but he screenshotted it, his hands steady with resolve. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was betrayal. As dawn approached, Eric lay awake, plotting his next move. Confrontation could wait. He'd gather every piece of evidence to protect himself. The cabin, once a dream, was now a battlefield. He thought of their wedding vows, the promises now broken. Anger mixed with grief, but new clarity emerged. He deserved the truth, and he'd get it, no matter the cost. The third morning in the Colorado cabin felt suffocating, the weight of Eric's discoveries pressing against his chest. He hadn't slept, the damning audio and screenshot from Emily's phone replaying in his mind. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion, but a cold, hard truth. Yet, as the sun rose over the Rockies, casting long shadows through the cabin's windows, Eric's anger sharpened into resolve. He wouldn't let emotion cloud his next steps. He needed a plan, one that would protect him and expose the lies without descending into chaos. Eric rose from the couch, his body stiff but his mind clear. He made coffee, the routine grounding him as he mapped out his strategy. Confronting Emily and Lauren now might feel good, but it risked a messy scene with no resolution. Instead, he'd gather more evidence, return to Denver, and consult a lawyer. He wanted to end this marriage on his terms, safeguarding his finances and dignity. The cabin, once a symbol of reconnection, was now a crime scene, and he was collecting clues. Emily emerged, her eyes puffy, as if she'd barely slept either. Morning, she mumbled, avoiding his gaze as she poured coffee. Eric watched her, noting the tension in her shoulders. Morning, he replied, his tone neutral, masking the storm inside. Lauren followed, her usual swagger subdued. Big plans today? She asked, attempting to lighten the mood. Eric shrugged. Maybe a solo hike. You two do whatever. His words were casual, but the distance in his voice was deliberate. Emily flinched, but said nothing. At breakfast, the silence was deafening. Eric ate mechanically, his mind elsewhere. He'd already backed up the audio and screenshot to his cloud drive, ensuring they were safe. Now, he needed to observe Emily and Lauren, to catch any slip that could strengthen his case. He glanced at them, catching a quick, nervous look between them. It was subtle, but it fueled his determination. They knew he was onto something, and their unease was his leverage. Eric announced he'd head to a nearby town for supplies, a lie to buy time alone. Need anything? He asked, testing their reactions. Emily shook her head too quickly, while Lauren muttered, "We're good." He nodded, grabbing his keys, and left, the SUV's engine roaring as he pulled away. In town, he found a quiet cafe with Wi-Fi and emailed the evidence to himself, encrypting the files. Then he searched for divorce attorneys in Denver, bookmarking a few with strong reviews. Every step felt like reclaiming control, a shield against the pain. Back at the cabin, Emily and Lauren were on the porch, talking in hushed tones. They stopped when Eric approached, their faces tight. He didn't acknowledge it, carrying a bag of groceries inside. "Got some stuff for dinner," he said, his voice steady. Emily followed him, her voice tentative. "Eric, are we okay?" He paused, meeting her eyes. "Are we?" he countered, letting the question hang. She looked away, and he knew she felt the shift. The game was on, and he was playing to win. That afternoon, Eric suggested a group activity, a drive to a nearby overlook. He wanted to keep them close, to watch their dynamic under pressure. In the car, Emily sat up front, Lauren in the back, the tension palpable. Eric kept the conversation light, asking about their college days, probing for cracks. Lauren answered eagerly, but Emily's responses were short, her discomfort obvious. At the overlook, they took photos, Emily and Lauren posing together while Eric snapped the shots. He noticed their hands linger, a touch too long, and his stomach churned. He saved the photos, another piece of evidence. Dinner was a repeat of the previous nights, Emily and Lauren in sync, Eric on the sidelines. But now, he was observant, not passive. He noted every glance, every whispered aside, storing them mentally. When Lauren suggested a movie, Eric agreed, but positioned himself to see their reflections in the TV screen. Their subtle touches, Lauren's hand grazing Emily's knee, confirmed what he already knew. He excused himself early, claiming a headache, and retreated to the couch. Alone, Eric reviewed his evidence. The audio was damning, the screenshot undeniable, and the photos added context. But he wanted one more piece, something irrefutable. Late that night, he heard them again, whispering in the bedroom. He crept closer, phone ready, and recorded. "We need to tell him," Emily whispered, her voice shaky. Lauren's reply was firm. "Not yet. We'll figure it out." Eric stopped recording, his heart racing. It was enough. He had what he needed. The next morning, Eric woke with a new sense of purpose. He played the part of the oblivious husband, joking over breakfast, but his eyes were sharp, catching every reaction. Emily seemed rattled, her smiles forced, while Lauren's confidence wavered. When Emily suggested cutting the trip short, Eric agreed, feigning disappointment. "Yeah, maybe we're not vibing here," he said, watching her closely. Her relief was obvious, and it stung, but it also confirmed his decision. This marriage was over. As they packed, Eric moved methodically, ensuring his evidence was secure. He checked Emily's phone one last time, finding another text of Lauren. "I'm scared he knows." He screenshotted it, then locked the phone. In the car, the drive back to Denver was silent, the mountains fading in the rearview. Eric's mind was already in the future, meetings with lawyers, a new apartment, a life without lies. He glanced at Emily, her face drawn, and felt a pang of grief. But it passed. He was done being the fool. The drive back to Denver was a silent funeral for Eric's marriage. The Rockies blurred past, their majesty lost on him as he gripped the steering wheel, his mind fixed on the future. Emily sat beside him, staring out the window, her face a mask of regret. Lauren, in the back, scrolled her phone, her earlier bravado gone. Eric's evidence, audio recordings, screenshots, and photos, was safely stored in the cloud, a lifeline to reclaim his life. He felt no triumph, only a grim determination to end the deception and move forward. Back in their loft, the air was thick with tension. Emily tried to break it, her voice small. "Eric, can we talk?" He turned, his expression unyielding. "Not yet," he said, heading to his office. He locked the door, opened his laptop, and sent the evidence to a divorce attorney he contacted in town. The lawyer, a sharp woman named Carla, responded quickly, scheduling a meeting for the next day. Eric exhaled, the wheels of justice beginning to turn. He wouldn't confront Emily until he was ready, until every move was calculated. That night, Emily slept in the guest room, a tacit admission of their fracture. Eric lay awake, the loft feeling foreign, a shell of the home they'd built. He thought of their early days, late-night talks, shared dreams, and mourned the woman he thought he knew. But grief gave way to clarity. He deserved honesty, and he'd fight for it, not with shouts but with strategy. By morning, his resolve was ironclad. At the attorney's office, Carla reviewed the evidence, her expression professional but empathetic. "You've got a strong case," she said. The texts and recordings show clear infidelity, which can influence asset division in Colorado, even in a no-fault state. We'll push for a fair settlement. Eric nodded, detailing their finances, joint accounts, the loft, his architecture firm. Carla outlined the process. File for divorce, serve Emily papers, and negotiate terms. Stay calm, she advised. Don't tip your hand. Eric agreed, his focus razor-sharp. Back home, Emily was waiting, her eyes red. Eric, please, let's fix this, she pleaded. He held up a hand, his voice steady. I know about you and Lauren. I heard you in the cabin. I saw the texts. Haressa crumbled, but she didn't deny it. I didn't mean to hurt you, she whispered. It just happened. Eric's jaw tightened. It didn't just happen. You chose to lie. He walked away, leaving her in stunned silence. The confrontation was brief, but it drew a line. There was no going back. Over the next week, Eric moved methodically. He met with Carla to file the divorce papers, citing irreconcilable differences but leveraging the evidence for leverage. He transferred his personal funds to a separate account, protecting his assets. He also confided in a close friend, Mark, who listened without judgment. You're doing the right thing, Mark said. You can't live with someone who betrays you like that. The support grounded Eric, reminding him he wasn't alone. When Emily was served the papers, she broke down, begging for a second chance. I'll end things with Lauren, she sobbed. We could go to therapy. Eric shook his head, his heart heavy but firm. It's too late, Emily. Trust is gone. He moved out that day, filing for divorce, renting a small apartment downtown. The space was bare, but it felt like freedom, a fresh start untainted by lies. Word of the divorce spread among their social circle, and Eric shared the truth with a few trusted friends, not to vilify Emily, but to reclaim his narrative. The response was swift. Mutual acquaintances, shocked by Emily's deception, distanced themselves. Lauren, too, faced backlash. Her photography gigs dwindled as clients caught wind of her role. Eric didn't revel in their downfall, but he felt a quiet satisfaction. Actions had consequences, and theirs were catching up. Months later, the divorce was finalized. Eric kept his firm and half the loft's value, while Emily took her car and savings. She moved to a smaller place, her spark dimmed by regret. Lauren left Denver, chasing work elsewhere. Eric heard through friends that Emily tried to reach out, but he didn't respond. She'd made her choice, and he'd made his, to live authentically, free of betrayal. Eric threw himself into work, designing a community center that earned local praise. He started therapy, unpacking the pain, but also rediscovering his strength. On weekends, he hiked the Rockies alone, the trails a reminder of his resilience. One evening, watching the sunset from a peak, he felt a weight lift. The cabin trip had shattered him, but it also woke him up. He was no longer the man who ignored red flags, who settled for half-truths. At a gallery opening months later, Eric met Sarah, a quiet artist with a sharp wit. They talked for hours, her honesty refreshing. He didn't rush, but he felt a spark, a possibility of something real. As he drove home, Denver's skyline glowing, he smiled. The pain of Emily's betrayal had scarred him, but it hadn't broken him. He'd chosen truth, and it had set him free.